I am Shiheng, an Alibaba cloud technology developer. Today we are going to talk about the network plugin Terway for container services. Alibaba Cloud Container Services are compatible with two network plugins, Flannel and Terway. Before you create a cluster, we recommend that you first learn about how to choose a network plugin. In this issue, we will mainly discuss some capabilities of Terway. Terway provides three major benefits. The first benefit is that Terway is developed based on cloud-native technologies. In Terway, pod IP addresses are IP addresses in the Cloud-Native Virtual Private Cloud (VPC). The pod IP addresses can be seamlessly integrated with cloud services such as Server Load Balancer, NAT Gateway, and Elastic IP address. The second benefit is that Terway can provide high network performance. In Terway mode, the communication between pods does not require encapsulating packets. The performance of Terway nearly reaches the network performance of Elastic Compute Service. In addition, Terway supports eBPF accelerated service networks and network policies. The third benefit is that Terway can provide enterprise-level support. In Terway, you can define the security rules, throttling rules, and priorities of the network to deploy applications online or offline. Let's put Terway into practice. This way we can understand the differences between Terway and traditional network plugins. The first difference is if you select Terway as the network plugin, when you create a cluster, you must select a pod vSwitch. As opposed to other network plugins, you do not need to assign a virtual CIDR block for pods in the cluster. Pod IP addresses in Terway mode are assigned from the vSwitch of Alibaba Cloud. In Alibaba Cloud Container Services, pod IP addresses are assigned from VPC after you select Terway. Let's look at an existing cluster. You can see that when you create a pod in the cluster, the pod IP address and the node IP address are in the same network plane. This tells us that pod IP addresses are cloud-native network addresses in Terway. Pod IP addresses are assigned from Alibaba Cloud VPC. The second difference is that you can associate a public IP address with a pod in Terway. You can associate a separate public IP address with each pod. You can access the IP address in scenarios such as games and conference calls. Let's go back to the Nginx stateless application. Click View in YAML in the stateless application. In the pod template, you can add an annotation to the public IP address. Use the k8s.aliyun.com/pod-with-eip annotation to declare that each pod in the stateless application has a public IP address. Click Update. You can see that the new pod is being created. Wait for the new pod to be created. Now the pod is created. Click Details. In the annotation, you can see that a public IP address is assigned to the pod. Enter the public IP address in the address bar. Then you can access the Nginx application that you deployed. Using Terway, you can assign a separate public IP address for each pod in the cluster. The third difference is that load balancers can directly communicate with back-end pods in the Terway network mode. In Kubernetes, you can use a service of SLB type to expose your applications. The port of a service is mapped to a node port in the cluster. When a client outside the cluster accesses the service, the client accesses the node IP address and the node port. The access requests are forwarded to back-end pods. This allows Kubernetes services to enable load balancing. In Terway, pods can be directly mounted to the back end of a load balancer. Let's verify this capability of Terway. In the Container Service for Kubernetes ACK console, choose Network Services. Click Create in the upper right corner of the page, then select Server Load Balancer from the Type drop-down list. Select the Nginx stateless application that you created from the backend drop-down list to associate the application with SLB. Select a container port and then click Create. Then, wait for this external endpoint to be assigned. Now the external endpoint is successfully assigned. Click this external endpoint. You can successfully access the Nginx application that you deployed. Then go to the SLB console to check whether the public IP address of the pod is mounted to the backend of the SLB. In the SLB console, click Refresh. Now you can see that the address of the SLB instance that you created. Click the address. The pod IP address is directly mounted to the vServer group, which is the back-end server group of the SLB. Node port is not used in the mounting process.